Rejected and returned too many times until a human gave
It's
the
okay.
alien girl a forever home.
You're safe now.
The adoption center hung in
I won't
silence,
hurt you.
except for the faint hum of machinery and the occasional chatter of alien visitors. Rows of pods stretched along the wide corridor, each containing a small being waiting for someone to choose them. Some were vibrant, energetic, and immediately charming to visitors. Others were quiet, reserved, and often overlooked. At the very end of the corridor, tucked into the shadowed corner, was a small pod with a faint, flickering glow. Inside was a girl no older than 7 in human terms, with translucent skin that shimmered faintly like the surface of a calm lake under moonlight. Her eyes, large and luminous, darted nervously at every passing visitor. She had been here for longer than she cared to remember. She had been rejected again and again, each time her heart shrinking a little more. Each time the flicker of her skin dimming under the weight of disappointment. Her name was Lyra. She belonged to a species that few understood. They were delicate, sensitive, and rare, but intelligent in ways that often frightened those who had never interacted with them. Her species had been rejected across the galaxy for generations, labeled as fragile or strange, unfit to live among others. And Lyra had felt the sting of every single rejection. She had hoped, once or twice, that someone might see her differently, that someone might see past her glowing skin, past her tremors of nervous energy, to the intelligence and kindness within. But hope had become a dangerous thing. She had learned to hide her sadness behind quiet silence. She had learned to survive in the cold space between expectation and rejection. The day was ending. Visitors had mostly left, and the lights in the center dimmed slightly to prepare for the night cycle. Lyra curled into the small corner of her pod, hugging her knees, watching as the last few families left with their new companions. She felt the familiar ache in her chest, a heaviness that whispered to her that no one would ever choose her. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting herself imagine what it might feel like to have someone care, to have a home where she was safe. The thought made her stomach twist with longing, but she quickly pushed it away. She had been disappointed too many times. She could not bear to feel that hope again. Footsteps echoed in the corridor. They were firm, confident, and yet calm, carrying the kind of energy that drew attention without shouting. Lyra's head lifted cautiously. A human approached, tall, with warm brown eyes and a calm presence that made the air around him feel steadier. He paused in front of her pod and knelt down to her level. Lyra's flicker of fear brightened for a moment into curiosity. Humans were different from most visitors. Most only glanced at her species with mild interest before moving on. Most did not bother to look closely, but this human did. His eyes held a kind of patience she had never seen. "You're Lyra, right?" he asked gently. His voice was soft but confident, the kind of voice that made her ears perk up and her skin flicker in light patterns. "I think I might be able to help you." Lyra's small frame stiffened. She had heard this before. Many visitors had said words like that, only to walk away moments later when her oddness frightened them. She said nothing, watching him carefully. The human smiled faintly, noticing her hesitation. "I'm Captain Ethan Rourke," he said. "I've been all over the galaxy, and I've seen a lot of strange things. I've met a lot of beings. But I think you're special, Lyra." The words made her skin flicker brightly, almost violently. She had never been called special before. Usually she was described as unusual, fragile, or even not suitable for companionship. Special was a word she had thought she would never hear, but she did not dare show her relief. She only looked at him with wide, cautious eyes. Ethan crouched slightly closer, lowering his voice as though sharing a secret. "I'm looking for someone to come with me on my ship, someone who wants a place where they are safe, a place where they can learn, grow, and feel like they belong. I think you might be the one I've been looking for." Lyra's mind raced. Could this be true? Could someone finally care for her in a way that was not fleeting? She wanted to believe him, but years of rejection had built walls around her heart. She remained quiet, her flickering skin dimming slightly, as if to hide her hope. Ethan did not push her. Instead, he waited, giving her space, letting her observe him, letting her choose whether to trust him. There was no hurry, no pressure, only the calm persistence of someone who had seen too much to be frightened by appearances. Finally, after a long silence, Lyra took a trembling breath and reached a small hand toward the edge of her pod. Ethan's smile widened gently, and he extended his own hand. Their fingers met through the transparent barrier. And for the first time in a long time, Lyra felt a warmth that had nothing to do with her flickering skin. "Do you want to come with me?" Ethan asked softly. Lyra nodded, barely audible, but it was enough. The pod's security interface opened, and Ethan guided her out carefully. The other staff in the center watched with polite curiosity, but no one interfered. They had seen too many like Lyra to assume she would find a home. But Ethan did not see her as fragile or strange. He saw her as capable, intelligent, and worthy of care. The walk to the shuttle bay was quiet. Lyra clung to Ethan's hand, her small form trembling with a mixture of fear and excitement. The stars outside the center stretched endlessly, cold and distant. But the warmth of Ethan's presence made them feel smaller, closer, almost welcoming. She had never felt such safety before. On board the ship, Lyra's eyes widened at the sheer size and complexity of the vessel. Machines hummed with precision, lights flickered softly across polished surfaces, and strange alien flora in small containment units lined parts of the ship. It was different from anything she had ever imagined, and yet for the first time, it felt like a place where she might belong. Ethan guided her gently to a small room he had prepared. "This will be your space," he said. "It's not perfect, but it's yours. You can make it however you like. And if you ever need help, I'm here. Always." Lyra's skin flickered with soft blues and greens, a reflection of her cautious happiness. She stepped inside slowly, looking around, touching the surfaces, and finally letting herself sink onto a small cushion that had been placed in the corner. She had a home. Finally, she had a home. Days passed. Lyra learned the routines of the ship. She explored corridors, met the small crew members, and even helped Ethan in small ways, carrying tools or observing star maps. Every day, she grew more confident, her skin glowing brighter as her trust in humans and in Ethan deepened. But fear still lingered. Memories of rejection haunted her during quiet moments. Sometimes she would curl up in her room and whisper to herself, "They will leave me again. They always leave." Ethan noticed these moments and never forced her to speak. Instead, he left small gestures of care, a fresh plant in her room, a warm blanket, a soft voice calling her to look at a nebula or a distant star. Slowly, Lyra began to understand that humans could be different from what she feared. They could protect, nurture, and see the beauty in what others overlooked. One evening, as the ship drifted near a sparkling blue star, Lyra stood at the viewing deck, gazing at the endless expanse. Ethan approached quietly, standing beside her. "It's beautiful," he said softly. Lyra nodded. "Yes, it is," she whispered. Her eyes flickered in soft lavender tones. She realized that for the first time she did not feel small or unwanted. She felt seen. Ethan smiled at her, a small, understanding smile. "You are special, Lyra. Don't ever forget that." She looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time in her life, she believed it. A warmth spread through her chest, chasing away the shadows of rejection. She was not fragile. She was not unwanted. She was capable, intelligent, and worthy of love. And most importantly, she was finally home. The stars outside stretched endlessly. A vast universe filled with unknown dangers and possibilities. But inside the small room of a starship, Lyra's world had finally expanded to include trust, safety, and the beginning of a family. She had been rejected too many times before, but now she had been chosen. And that choice, that simple act of seeing her for who she truly was, would change everything. For the first time in her life, Lyra smiled, not the tentative flicker of hope, but a steady, full smile that reached her eyes. She had a forever home. Lyra's first few days on the Odyssey were a mixture of awe and fear. The ship was alive in ways she had never imagined. Lights pulsed softly along the corridors, Machinery hummed like a chorus of small creatures, and strange plants swayed gently in their containment units. Every corner held something new, and every sound demanded attention. She moved carefully, letting her glowing skin flicker softly as she absorbed everything. The humans and aliens on board were kind, but she remained wary. Too many times before, kindness had vanished the moment someone realized she was different. Captain Ethan Rourke noticed her hesitation, but he did not push. Instead, he gave her small tasks that built her confidence. At first, she only carried supplies from one room to another or helped observe readings on a console. Her hands trembled when she touched delicate instruments, and she sometimes froze when the ship vibrated with the engines. But Ethan's calm presence reassured her. "It's okay," he said. "Mistakes happen. You are learning, and learning is how you grow." Lyra learned quickly. She watched Ethan as he worked, studying how he solved problems, how he spoke to the crew, how he treated each living being on the ship with respect. Slowly, she mimicked his movements and began to take initiative. A small thrill of pride flickered across her skin when she correctly adjusted a minor navigation setting on the star map. The console beeped approval, and she realized that she had done something useful, something no one had trusted her to do before. Her growing confidence did not go unnoticed by the rest of the crew. A small alien mechanic named Jory approached her one afternoon. "You are different," Jory said, tilting his head. "I have seen many new companions come aboard, but you are careful, yet curious. Most of them panic when the engines vibrate, but not you." Lyra felt a flicker of pride and a pang of sadness at the same time. She had been different her whole life, and difference had often brought rejection. But here her difference was noticed with appreciation rather than fear. "Thank you," she whispered softly, unsure of how else to respond. Ethan watched their interaction from the nearby deck. He smiled quietly. He had hoped the crew would begin to see Lyra's value, but he also knew she needed to trust them in her own time. Trust could not be forced, could only be earned. One morning, Lyra followed Ethan to the ship's observation deck. The Odyssey was passing through a nebula, a swirling cloud of gas and dust that shimmered with blues and purples. The sight was breathtaking, but Lyra's attention was drawn to the control panels along the deck. Ethan gestured for her to observe. "See how the ship moves through the nebula?" he said. "Every adjustment must be precise. A single mistake, and we could be in danger. But if we work together, we can navigate anything." Lyra nodded, her skin flickering nervously. I want to help," she said. Ethan's smile was gentle. "I know you do, and you will. We will start small, and I will guide you." The first real test came sooner than she expected. A warning light flashed on the console. One of the ship's containment fields had destabilized. This field kept some of the ship's experimental equipment safely stored, but it was beginning to overload. Sparks flew, and a low hum filled the deck. The crew froze, unsure of what to do. Lyra's heart pounded. She had never faced anything like this before. Her instincts screamed to run, to hide, but Ethan remained calm. He placed a hand lightly on her shoulder. "You can do this," he said. "I will help you." Together they approached the containment field. Ethan guided her hands over the controls, explaining each step slowly and clearly. Her fingers moved with care, pressing buttons and sliding levers as he instructed. For a moment the hum grew louder and sparks flew closer to them, but Ethan's calm voice steadied her. "Focus on the rhythm," he said. "You control the flow. You are not afraid? You are capable." Lyra inhaled deeply. Her glowing skin shifted from nervous blues to determined greens. She concentrated, following Ethan's instructions with precision. Slowly, the hum subsided and the sparks ceased. The containment field stabilized. She had done it. She had prevented a potential disaster. The crew erupted in quiet applause, and even Jory looked impressed. "I did it," Lyra whispered, hardly believing her own words. Ethan knelt beside her, his eyes warm. "Yes," he said. "You did it. I knew you could." For the first time, Lyra felt a rush of pride that was not mixed with fear. She had contributed, she had helped, and she had been trusted. She realized that humans and, perhaps some aliens too, could see beyond her fragility. They could see her strength. That evening, she sat quietly in her room, replaying the events of the day in her mind. She felt a new sense of purpose. Perhaps this ship could be more than a home. It could be a place where she belonged. A place where she could grow and learn without fear of rejection. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock on the door. Ethan peeked inside, holding a small tray with fruit and a warm drink. "I thought you might like a snack," he said gently. Lyra smiled faintly, her skin flickering in soft lavender. "Thank you," she said. Ethan stepped inside, sitting on the edge of her bed. "You did very well today," he said. "Not many beings could handle what you handled, but you stayed calm, focused, and brave. That is something special, Lyra. Remember that." She nodded, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. She wanted to believe him, and this time, she allowed herself to. For the first time in years, she felt like she was capable of more than surviving. She felt like she could thrive. The next few days brought small adventures and challenges. Lyra learned to help in the ship's kitchen, preparing meals with Jory and sharing small jokes that made her laugh. She helped Ethan study star charts and even learned to operate minor ship systems under his supervision. Each success, each smile, each word of encouragement built her confidence further. She no longer flinched at every noise or tremor. She began to anticipate them, to respond, to act. One afternoon, the Odyssey approached a nearby asteroid cluster. The ship's sensors indicated minor debris moving unpredictably in the cluster. Ethan decided to use the situation as a lesson. "We need to adjust the ship's path," he said, "and I want you to help me monitor the sensors." Lyra's heart raced. The memory of the containment field incident was still fresh, and she feared failure. But Ethan's calm presence reassured her. She stepped to the console, her fingers hovering over the controls. "I'm ready," she whispered. Together, they adjusted the sensors, monitored the movement of the asteroids, and recalculated the ship's trajectory. It was a delicate operation, requiring precision and careful timing. Lyra's hands moved steadily, following Ethan's guidance. For the first time, she felt a real sense of teamwork. Her contributions mattered. She was trusted to make a difference. The asteroid cluster passed safely, and Ethan clapped her gently on the shoulder. "Well done, Lyra," he said. "See? You are capable of more than you imagined." Lyra's skin flickered with soft golds and blues. She smiled, a small but confident smile. She had learned something important, that she was not fragile in the way others had feared. She was strong in ways that mattered, ways that could save lives. And most importantly, she was not alone. That night, Lyra sat by the observation window, watching the stars streak past as the Odyssey glided through space. She thought of the adoption center, of the many times she had been rejected, of the cold pods and the empty halls. And she realized something remarkable. She had left all that behind. She had a new beginning, a place where she was seen, valued, trusted. Ethan joined her quietly, standing at her side. "Do you see how far you've come?" he asked softly. "From being afraid to being brave, from hiding to helping. You are doing more than surviving, Lyra. You are thriving." Lyra looked at him, her eyes shining. I think I am," she whispered. "I think I really am." Ethan smiled, his hand brushing gently over hers. "Good. That's exactly what I wanted you to see. You are capable, special, and worthy. And I will be here with you every step of the way." Lyra felt a surge of hope that she had not felt in years. The world was vast and full of dangers, but here, on this ship, with this human who had seen her for who she truly was, she felt something she had never known before: safety, trust, and the beginnings of belonging. And as the Odyssey continued its journey through the endless expanse of stars, Lyra realized that her story was only just beginning. The universe was vast, full of challenges and wonders, but for the first time, she felt ready. She would face the unknown not as a fragile, rejected girl, but as a capable, brave being who had finally found someone to believe in her. She had a home. She had trust. And she had a future. The Odyssey moved silently through the dark stretch of space, its engines humming like a heartbeat. Lyra sat at the observation deck, her glowing skin flickering softly with shades of green and lavender as she stared at the endless black dotted with stars. She had been quiet all morning, a thoughtful frown on her small face. Ethan noticed her silence and came to stand beside her, leaning slightly against the railing. "You've been thinking?" he said gently. Lyra nodded. I want to see where I came from," she whispered. "I want to understand my people, even if it is." Scary Ethan's eyes softened. "I thought you might say that," he replied. "It's not easy, and it may bring up old fears, but I'll be with you every step of the way. You'll never be alone." Her heart skipped at the words. Trusting him had become easier over the past days. But the thought of revisiting the world where she had been abandoned so many times still made her skin flicker nervously. "Do you really think I can handle it?" she asked. Ethan smiled. "You've handled more than you think. Remember the containment field incident? The asteroid cluster. You were brave, capable, and precise. This is just another step, and I'll help you face it." Lyra took a deep breath and nodded. She felt a mixture of fear and anticipation. Her curiosity about her origins outweighed the unease that stirred in her chest. The Odyssey adjusted its course, heading toward a planet in a remote sector of world that had once been home to her species. As they approached, the planet came into view, a pale blue and green sphere surrounded by a thin ring of clouds. At first glance, it looked serene, almost welcoming. But as they drew closer, Lyra noticed the scars etched across its surface. Vast craters, barren lands, and abandoned structures told a story of loss, abandonment, and fear. Lyra's chest tightened. Memories she had long tried to suppress flickered in her mind. The cold corridors of her home colony, the wary gazes of others, the constant fear of being rejected. "It looks empty," she whispered. Her skin dimmed to a soft, trembling blue. Ethan placed a hand lightly on her shoulder. "It's not empty," he said. "It's a place that needs someone brave enough to see its story, someone who can help heal it. And I know you are that someone." The ship landed in a small clearing near what remained of the central settlement. Rusted structures jutted from the ground, some partially collapsed, and wild plants had begun reclaiming the land. The wind carried a strange metallic scent, and the air was filled with the faint hum of ancient machinery still trying to operate. Lyra stepped off the ship cautiously, her small feet crunching on the dry soil. Her eyes scanned the ruins, absorbing every detail. This is where I was meant to live," she murmured. And now, her voice faltered. She felt the weight of all the losses her species had endured. "And now, it is gone." Ethan crouched beside her. "It may look that way," he said softly, "but remnants are not the same as the end. Your people survived in other ways, in hidden places. Some are still out there, living cautiously, waiting for someone to help them feel safe again." Lyra's eyes flickered with a soft green light. "Do you think they would trust me?" she asked. "After all that has happened?" Ethan smiled. "If anyone can earn their trust, it's you. You've already shown courage, patience, and kindness. That is more than enough to start." They walked carefully among the ruins. Lyra's gaze drawn to fragments of her past, a broken playground, a library of damaged data crystals, a small memorial to those who had been lost. Each sight brought a wave of memory, some painful, some bittersweet. She had grown up surrounded by fear, but also by stories of hope, intelligence, and ingenuity. She realized that despite the destruction, the spirit of her people had not vanished entirely. Suddenly, a rustle of movement caught their attention. Lyra froze. Instinctively stepping behind Ethan, small figures emerged from the shadows, other members of her species. Their skin dim and cautious. They observed her with wide eyes, their postures tense. Lyra's heart pounded. She recognized them. They were survivors, hiding from the dangers that had driven most of her people away. One of them, slightly older than Lyra, stepped forward. "Who are you?" The figure asked in a voice that trembled but carried authority. "Why have you come here?" Lyra swallowed hard, feeling a flicker of fear. I am Lyra," she said softly. "I was born here. I survived, and I want to help." The group exchanged wary glances. They had learned to trust no one, to survive in secrecy, and strangers were dangerous. Yet there was something in Lyra's voice, something familiar and honest, that made them pause. Ethan stepped forward slightly, keeping his hands visible. "I am Captain Ethan Rourke," he said calmly. "I travel through the galaxy, and I've come with Lyra. She asked me to help her, and if you allow it, I can help all of you feel safe again. I do not want to harm you." The silence was heavy. The older survivors studied them carefully. Measuring Ethan's words against the trust they had learned to guard jealously. Finally, after what felt like hours but was only minutes, they nodded slightly. "We will see," the figure said. "But we have been hurt before. One wrong move, and you will regret it." Lyra's skin flickered nervously but brightly this time, a mixture of fear and hope. She stepped forward, holding out her small hand. "I promise," she said softly. "I want to help, not hurt. I want to learn, and I want to be with you, not against you." The group watched her cautiously. Then slowly, one by one, they stepped closer. The tension eased, just slightly, and a fragile connection began to form. For the first time, Lyra felt the possibility of belonging, not just with Ethan and his crew, but with her own people. Ethan observed quietly, offering silent support. He did not interfere, knowing that this trust had to come from Lyra herself. And as he watched her speak and gesture, as the survivors responded cautiously but openly, he realized that Lyra's bravery was not only in her actions on the ship, it was in her willingness to face the pain of her past and step into it. Hoping for connection, over the next several hours, Lyra walked among the survivors, asking questions, listening to their stories, and sharing her own. She learned of the dangers that had forced them into hiding: raiders, exploiters, and species that had sought to capture her people for their rare abilities. She also learned of their hopes, small acts of kindness and clever strategies that had kept them alive. She realized that, despite all the destruction and loss, her people had survived because of intelligence, resilience, and courage, the same qualities Ethan had seen in her as the sun set on the planet. Casting long shadows over the ruins, Lyra sat quietly with the survivors. Listening to their soft conversations, for the first time, she felt a sense of connection, not just with Ethan, but with the larger story of her species. She understood now that survival was not just about enduring, it was about reaching out, trusting, and building bonds even when it was difficult. Ethan stood nearby, watching the scene with a soft smile. He had hoped that bringing Lyra to her homeworld remnants would teach her something about resilience and trust, and it had. She had faced fear, uncertainty, and the ghosts of rejection, and she had begun to overcome them. Lyra turned to Ethan, her glowing skin flickering gently. "I think I can help them," she said. "I can help them feel safe again. Maybe we can rebuild in a small way what was lost." Ethan nodded. "Yes," he said. "And I'll be here to help too. But remember, this will take patience. Some will be slow to trust. Some will test you. But every step you take, every moment of care, will make a difference." Lyra smiled softly, her fear slowly transforming into determination. She realized that courage was not the absence of fear, it was acting despite it. She had survived rejection, abandonment, and fear. Now, she could use her strength not just to survive, but to help others. As night fell on the planet, the stars reflected in Lyra's eyes, mingling with the faint glow of her skin. For the first time, she felt a sense of purpose that went beyond herself. She was not just a fragile, misunderstood girl. She was a bridge between her people and the wider universe. She was a protector, a learner, and a beacon of hope. And though the shadows of her past would always be a part of her, she no longer feared them. With Ethan by her side, and the beginnings of trust forming among her people, she realized that she was stronger than she had ever known. The journey ahead would not be easy, but she was ready. The planet was scarred, survivors wary, but hope flickered, fragile but persistent. Lyra understood now that her home was not just a place, it was the connections she built, the trust she earned, and the courage she carried. And for the first time in her life, she believed that even in the vast, dangerous universe, she could make a difference. The Odyssey drifted through the glowing cloud of the nebula, stars flickering like distant candles through the colored gas. Lyra walked along the observation deck, her glowing skin softly illuminating the floor as she traced her fingers along the railing. The memories of her home planet still lingered in her mind, but she had begun to feel something new: strength. She had faced her fears, met her people, and even begun to rebuild connections. Yet she could not ignore a lingering unease. Something about the nebula felt unpredictable. Ethan appeared beside her quietly, his gaze following her flickering light. "The nebula is beautiful," he said softly, "but beautiful places can hide danger. Today will be a lesson." Lyra turned to him, curious and nervous. "A lesson? What kind of lesson?" He smiled faintly. "One that will test your courage, your skills, and your trust. Are you ready?" Her skin flickered nervously, a mixture of fear and anticipation. I think so," she replied. She had learned that she could do more than survive, but this felt like the first true challenge. She had been given without guidance, holding her completely. The warning alarm sounded suddenly, red lights flashing across the control panels. Lyra's heart jumped. Ethan grabbed her hand and pulled her to the nearest console. "Sensors indicate a rogue asteroid cluster," he said. "It's moving fast, and if we don't adjust our course immediately, we could be hit." Lyra stared at the screens, seeing the swirling debris mapped in 3 dimensions. The asteroids were irregular, moving unpredictably through the nebula. Fear gripped her chest. In the past, she would have hidden, cowering from any danger. But now she took a deep breath and reminded herself of Ethan's words: "Courage is acting even when you are afraid." Ethan guided her to the main control panel. "You'll help me monitor the sensors and calculate our adjustments." "I'll guide you, but this is your moment, Lyra. I trust you." Lyra's skin glowed a steady green. She nodded and focused on the displays. Her small hands hovered over the controls, and she began following Ethan's instructions precisely. The asteroid cluster loomed larger on the screen, and her fingers flew over the controls. Adjusting the ship's shields and trajectory calculations, a particularly large asteroid suddenly shifted in a way the sensors had not predicted. The ship shuddered, throwing Lyra off balance. Sparks flickered along the control panel, and the hum of the engines rose into a harsh vibration. She froze for a moment, panic threatening to take over. "Focus on the rhythm," Ethan said calmly. "You know what to do. You've trained for this. We are a team." Lyra inhaled deeply. She thought of the containment field incident, of the asteroid cluster they had navigated before. She thought of her home planet and of her people, and of the trust they had begun to place in her. She realized that fear was not weakness. It was a signal. It told her to act carefully, to focus, to be precise. Her skin flickered from green to a determined gold. She adjusted the shields, recalculated the trajectory, and input new commands into the navigation system. The ship rocked violently as the largest asteroid grazed its hull, but her calculations held. The Odyssey shifted smoothly, dodging the cluster with only minor damage to the outer plating. The crew exhaled in relief. Ethan smiled at her, his eyes full of pride. "Well done, Lyra," he said. "You did exactly what needed to be done." That was incredible. Lyra's chest swelled with pride, but she barely had time to process it. The nebula continued to swirl around them, and another warning flashed. A second rogue asteroid cluster had been detected, moving faster and closer to the ship. "This is it," Ethan said. "Another test. And this time, you'll lead." Lyra's heart thudded, but she felt a strange calm under the fear. She remembered all she had learned: observation, patience, calculation, and courage. She took her place at the console, her hands steady, despite the trembling of her legs. I can do this," she whispered. The sensors tracked the incoming cluster. Lyra worked quickly, predicting the paths of each asteroid and adjusting the shields and trajectory. She spoke aloud as she worked, reminding herself of each step. Adjust the shields. Reroute power. Correct trajectory. Her skin flickered brightly, reflecting her focus. The ship shuddered violently as a massive asteroid grazed the hull, sending a jolt through the deck. Crew members braced themselves, but Lyra remained focused. Recalculating the movements, predicting the next strike, and inputting commands faster than the computers could fully analyze. Her alien instinct, sensitive to gravitational fluctuations, helped her sense the movements before they appeared on the screen. Ethan watched in awe. "You're incredible," he said. "Your people's abilities. They make a difference." Lyra's heart raced, but she did not stop. She had trained, she had learned, and now she was proving that she could lead. The asteroid cluster pressed closer, larger and more chaotic. But she guided the Odyssey through, weaving between massive rocks, dodging debris that could have destroyed the ship in seconds. Finally, the last of the asteroids passed, and the ship's alarms quieted. The Odyssey's engines hummed a steady, calm rhythm once more. Lyra sank back into her chair, breathless but triumphant. Her skin glowed warmly, a mixture of relief, pride, and exhilaration. The crew erupted into cheers. Even Jory, the mechanic, smiled widely. "You did it, Lyra. That was amazing." Ethan came to her side, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "I told you," he said softly. "You are capable of more than you ever imagined. Today you were brave, precise, and strong. Today you led us." Lyra's eyes filled with tears, not of fear but of joy. She realized that this was more than just surviving. This was contributing, protecting, and proving that she could rise above fear. For the first time, she truly understood what Ethan had meant when he said she was special. That night, after the ship stabilized and the crew rested, Lyra sat quietly in her room, reflecting on the events of the day. Her hands still trembled slightly, but the fear had transformed into a steady determination. She realized that courage was not the absence of fear, it was action in spite of it. Ethan knocked softly on the door. "May I come in?" he asked. Lyra nodded, her skin flickering soft blue and gold. "Yes," he entered, carrying a small tray with warm food and a drink. "You need to eat," he said gently. "Today was exhausting, but I also wanted to tell you, I am proud of you." Lyra smiled faintly, a quiet warmth spreading through her chest. I think I finally understand," she whispered. "I'm not just surviving anymore. I can protect. I can help. I can be brave." Ethan nodded. "Exactly. And every day, you will grow stronger. Every challenge, every decision, every act of courage will build the person you are meant to be." Today was only one step in a much bigger journey. Lyra's skin flickered brighter as she looked up at him. "I want to keep going," she said softly. "I want to learn, to help, to protect. I don't want to be afraid anymore." Ethan smiled warmly. "Then you will, and I will be here with you every step of the way. You are not alone." The next day, Lyra began helping with more ship operations. She monitored external sensors, assisted in minor repairs, and even helped navigate through small asteroid fields with Ethan's guidance. Her confidence grew, and the crew began to trust her instinctively. Her unique abilities, combined with her intelligence and determination, made her an indispensable part of the Odyssey. Lyra also took time to reach out to the survivors from her home planet, communicating with them through secure channels and sharing guidance on how to remain safe while rebuilding. She began to understand that her courage had ripple effects, not only protecting the crew of the Odyssey, but also giving hope to her people scattered across the galaxy. One evening, as Lyra observed a distant supernova from the deck, Ethan joined her silently. They watched the brilliant explosion together, a reminder of the universe's beauty and danger. "You did something remarkable today," Ethan said softly. "You faced fear, uncertainty, and danger, and you led. That is not something many can do at your age, or with your past." Lyra's skin flickered gently, reflecting the colors of the supernova. "I feel different," she whispered. "Stronger, braver, like I finally belong somewhere." Ethan nodded. "You do. And not just here on the ship, but in the universe. You belong in every place you choose to go, in every life you touch, and in every moment of courage you take. Today proved that you can do more than survive, you can shine." Lyra's heart swelled with pride. She had faced the test, the fear, and the chaos, and she had prevailed. For the first time, she felt the full weight of her own strength and the warmth of belonging. She understood that life was not just about survival. It was about courage, trust, and the choices to act even when fear lingered. The Odyssey continued its journey through the nebula. Stars streaking past the observation deck like diamonds on black velvet. Lyra stood at the railing, her glowing skin flickering with the colors of determination and hope. She knew that more challenges awaited, but she also knew that she was ready. She was no longer the fragile, rejected girl who had been left behind. She was capable, strong, and part of a family that trusted and valued her. And in that moment, as the nebula's light washed over her, Lyra realized that her journey had truly begun, not as a survivor, but as a protector, a learner. In a being who could shape her own destiny, the Odyssey sailed through quiet space, leaving the nebula behind. Lyra stood on the observation deck, her skin glowing softly in gentle shades of gold and blue. She had faced fear, danger, and the shadows of her past. She had led through chaos, learned to trust, and connected with her people. And now, as the ship moved closer to the distant planet that Ethan called home, she felt a sense of anticipation unlike anything she had known. "This is it," Ethan said, standing beside her. "Our destination. Home." Lyra nodded, her glowing eyes reflecting the distant light of the planet below. "I've never had a home," she admitted softly. "Not really, but maybe now I do." Ethan smiled warmly. "I do. And not just a place to live, Lyra. A home is where you are seen, trusted, and loved. You belong here, and you always will." The planet grew larger as the Odyssey descended through the atmosphere. Below, green forests, sparkling rivers, and small human settlements spread across the land. The planet was alive, familiar, yet filled with the promise of new beginnings. Lyra felt a thrill of excitement and nervousness. She had never lived among humans except briefly, and she wondered how her people would react to her presence here. The ship landed on a quiet plateau near a small village. Ethan guided Lyra to the surface, and she stepped onto solid ground for the first time in weeks. The air smelled fresh, warm, and alive. Her skin flickered with delight as she took in the surroundings. Lyra's attention shifted to a group of children playing near a small grove. Humans, some aliens, and even a few young members of her species mingled together, laughing, learning, and exploring. For a moment, she hesitated. Would they accept her? Would she fit in? Ethan noticed her hesitation. "Go slowly," he said. "But remember, trust begins with a step. You've earned this, Lyra. You are ready." Lyra took a deep breath and stepped forward. Her glowing skin illuminated the path, catching the attention of the children. They paused their games, curious but not afraid. Some of them whispered, others stared in awe, but none ran away. A small girl, slightly younger than Lyra, stepped forward cautiously. "Are you like me?" she asked. Lyra smiled softly. "Yes," she said, "and we can play together. I'll help you learn, just like I've learned." The girl's eyes lit up, and she reached for Lyra's hand. Slowly, other children approached, their curiosity overcoming hesitation. Lyra felt a warmth in her chest, a mixture of joy, relief, and purpose. For the first time, she was not just accepted, she was wanted. Ethan watched, smiling quietly. "See," he said, "you belong here. You've brought hope to others, just as you found hope for yourself." Over the following days, Lyra integrated fully into the village. She helped teach younger children about exploration, observation, and using their unique abilities safely. She assisted the adults with minor tasks on the farm and in the workshop. Learning practical skills and sharing what she had learned aboard the Odyssey, her confidence grew steadily, her skin glowing brighter as she moved from task to task. Lyra also communicated with the survivors from her home planet, sending them messages of encouragement and guidance. She shared stories of her journey with Ethan and the Odyssey, explaining how they had navigated dangers and learned to trust one another. Slowly, her people began to emerge from hiding, inspired by her courage and resilience. They traveled carefully to the planet, seeking the same hope and safety Lyra had found. The reunion was emotional. Survivors approached cautiously at first, but Lyra's calm, reassuring presence drew them closer. She shared meals, laughter, and stories, building trust one step at a time. The villagers and the survivors began to form a small community, a blend of humans, aliens, and Lyra's species. Together, they worked to create gardens, repair homes, and establish schools. Lyra watched with pride as her people, once fearful and scattered, learned to live openly and safely. One evening, as the sun set over the village, Lyra sat with Ethan atop a small hill overlooking the settlement. The sky glowed in soft oranges and purples, casting a warm light over the community. Children played below, their laughter carrying through the air, mingling with the soft hum of machinery in the wind. Rustling through the trees, Lyra's glowing skin flickered with quiet reflection. "I can't believe this is real," she whispered. "I never imagined. A place like this, a home, people who trust me, people who care." Ethan placed a hand gently over hers. "You earned it, Lyra," he said. "All of it. You faced fear, uncertainty, and danger. You learned to trust and to lead. You brought hope to others. This is the home you created with your courage." Lyra felt tears prick at her eyes. For the first time, she allowed herself to feel the full weight of belonging. The rejections, the fears, the endless moments of loneliness, they were still a part of her, but they no longer defined her. She had grown beyond them. She had found strength, purpose, and family. The days that followed were filled with small triumphs and challenges. Lyra helped organize educational programs for the children, teaching them to explore, to learn about science, and to use their abilities safely. She led expeditions to nearby forests, teaching practical survival skills and the importance of observation and care. Each success, no matter how small, reinforced her sense of purpose and belonging. The adults in the community began to respect her as well. They sought her advice on matters of safety, strategy, and collaboration. Her voice, once small and hesitant, now carried weight. She realized that her experiences, her rejections, her journey, and her trials aboard the Odyssey had prepared her to guide others, to protect them, and to inspire courage. One afternoon, as the wind carried the scent of blooming flowers, Lyra gathered a group of children in the village square. She held a small book, its pages filled with sketches and notes from her adventures. "Do you see this?" she asked, her glowing hands pointing to the diagrams. "This is what we learned from exploring. We can learn, protect, and create. And no matter what others say about us, we can always find a place where we belong." The children listened attentively, their eyes wide with wonder. Some began to ask questions, others shared their own ideas and discoveries. Lyra realized that she was not just teaching, they were teaching her as well. She had once been afraid, rejected, and alone. But now she was part of a community that shared knowledge, trust, and hope. That evening, as the stars began to shimmer in the sky, Lyra walked through the village with Ethan. The settlers and survivors waved and smiled, and some even called out to her, asking for guidance or sharing small stories of success from the day. She felt a warmth in her heart, a deep sense of fulfillment. Ethan turned to her, his eyes reflecting the starlight. "Lyra," he said softly, "look at what you've done. You've brought people together, created safety, and inspired hope. You've turned fear into courage and loneliness into family. You've truly found a home not just in a place, but in hearts." Lyra smiled, her skin flickering softly in gratitude and joy. "I never thought I could belong anywhere," she said. "But now I see. I belong here with all of them." And with you, Ethan, he smiled back, a steady, reassuring presence. Yes, Lyra, you belong, and nothing can take that away. As night deepened, Lyra looked up at the stars, thinking of the vast universe she had traveled, the dangers she had faced, and the people she had met. She remembered the adoption center, the loneliness, and the endless moments of rejection. And she realized that every step, every struggle, and every act of courage had led her here. She had found safety, trust, and family. She had found purpose, and most importantly, she had found herself. The village slept peacefully under the glow of distant stars. Lyra's skin flickered gently in the night, reflecting the harmony of the home she had built, the bonds she had formed, and the hope she had inspired. She walked to the edge of the hill overlooking the settlement, her eyes shining with quiet determination. This was her forever home. Not just a place, but a life she had helped create. She had been rejected and abandoned many times, but she had never given up. She had trusted, learned, and grown stronger. And now, she had built a world where others could belong to. Lyra knew that challenges would continue to come danger. Doubt and uncertainty were always a part of life. But she also knew that she was no longer fragile or alone. She had courage, knowledge, and the bonds of family and community. She was ready for whatever the universe might bring. Ethan joined her on the hill, standing silently beside her. Together, they watched the stars, feeling the quiet strength of shared purpose. Lyra reached out and touched his hand, her skin flickering gently in soft golds and blues. "Thank you," she whispered, "for believing in me, for trusting me, for bringing me here." Ethan squeezed her hand gently. "No," he said softly. "Thank you, Lyra, for trusting, for learning, and for growing. You showed me and everyone around you that courage, hope, and heart can change everything. This is your world now, and you have made it brighter." Lyra smiled, truly smiled, without hesitation or doubt. The village, the survivors, the crew of the Odyssey, and the stars above, they were all part of her home now. She had found safety, love, and purpose. She had found family, belonging, and herself. And as the night sky shimmered above, Lyra's glow merged with the soft light of the stars. She was no longer just a rejected, fragile girl. She was brave, capable, and full of hope. She was a beacon in the universe, proof that trust, courage, and compassion could create a forever home. Even in the darkest of places, the universe was vast, full of wonders and dangers yet to be discovered. But Lyra was ready. She had survived rejection, faced fear, and found love and trust. She was home, and in that home she knew she could shine forever.